Okay, so I just want to go over the different solid modelling tools that we haven't really spent that much time on yet. So we've had a look at sweeps, had plenty of time looking at extrusions, but I just wanted to finish off with blends and revolves. I thought maybe a good example I can use to show you that is a simple cabinet with some different types of legs. So I might make one that I actually have made in real life. It's a very simple shelving unit, and so I'll use model in place, and I'm going to make the category casework, and I'll call this shelving. Oh, I've already got one with that name, so I'll just go back to that, and I'll call it curved shelf. Okay, so I'll start just with an extrusion to set the shape of my shelf. So I'm just going to draw a very simple curve here, just draw an arc. So you've done plenty of these, again, nothing to it, that's just a simple shape, and I'll offset that 400 mil. But I forget this is such a tiny space. Oh no, that'll be right, that'll fit. And then I'll put in some lines to close it off, and we've got a simple shape for an extrusion. I'm going to make the extrusion start 100 and the extrusion end 120. Okay, so I'll open up my section view just so you can see that that is a simple piece that's now 100 mil above the level that I was working on. And I'll come back to that and finish off the shelves, but that would be the bottom shelf. And so now, to make my revolve, I'm going to make a reference plane. And that often helps with revolves, because usually you need to draw in elevation. And so therefore, it makes it easier if you have a plane that you can use to set that elevation. Or the elevation plane is a better way of saying it. So I'm going to draw the reference plane here where I want the leg to be. So I want my leg about there. So my leg profile can sit on this plane. So I'm going to give that plane a name and call it shelf leg profile. Okay, so there's my reference plane, and this section view that I've been using looks towards that reference plane. So I'm going to open up that section view now, and then back on the Create tab, I'm going to go to Revolve. Solid Revolve. And as it always will in a project, if you're drawing in a section view, it'll ask you to choose a plane to draw in. And so that's why it's really important to name the plane. So here, shelf leg profile is the name that I've just given. Click OK. And then I'm going to draw the profile. And this is again from a real shelf that I designed and had built. So my profile, I'll start on the bottom of my shelf and then come across and then down at an angle. So that's how it looks from the outside. It's sloping, a sloping leg. I'm just going to draw this side straight down, and then it had a rounded bottom. So I'm going to use the arc tool again and just draw an arc from the end of this line across to the end of the other one, and then take it down so it's got a nice curve there. I now decide I'm going too far. That's actually not right, because again it's going to be revolved, so I'll delete that. So I'll draw it again from here, so down to, let's get this right, down to about there, and it's a bit hard to see with this line weight, so I'm going to change the scale to 1 to 20. just so the lines are a little bit lighter. And to make it easier, I'll extend this line down and then draw another line across. Yeah, okay, so I'll just nudge this out, this vertical line a bit more to the right as well, so I've got a bit more room to work with. And now I'm going to use this tool to draw my arc, fillet arc. So it's just like fillet in AutoCAD, we can use it to give a radius. So with fillet arc, I can choose the diagonal line, and then that line at the bottom, and then give a curve between those two shapes. There we are. So I'm trying to think of what half of the leg would look like, basically. So that's half of the leg. They're a pretty chunky leg, so that's about right. Okay, so now I'm going to use axis line. So up until now I've been drawing boundary lines. So I'm going to change over to axis line and simply draw a line from the corner of that leg going straight up. So that's my axis. And I'll even just extend that, I'll stretch it so that it's separated from my profile and you can see them separately. So it's going to revolve this shape around the axis. Okay, so I'll click, when I finish it, I'll click tick to finish, and you'll see then it's going to revolve it 360 degrees around that axis. Okay, so in 3D, you'll probably get a better idea how it looks. If I go to this view, that's looking the wrong way, so do I have any here? No, so in this 3D view, it's cropped. So I'll finish my model, and I'm going to rename this view and call it 3D Lounge. And now I can make a new 3D view, and then I might just hide this wall, so then I can see that piece, and there's my leg. Right, so there's the leg, and if we go to shaded, you get a better idea how it looks. So these were turned pieces of wood, solid pieces of wood that we had turned on a wood turning machine. I forgot what they're called, but on one of those, they're not spindles, but they're similar machines. They basically rotate the wood, and they can create this shape fairly easily. So if I decide, well, that's a bit big, I'll go to Edit and Place, select the shape, Edit Revolve, and then maybe I'll go back to that section view, or even a different one. Any of those sections would do, and can adjust the profile. So I can bring this back. Here, if you get a message like this saying the line's too short, you can just delete element. And then, again, tick to finish. And it's telling me the shape has to be made of closed loops. So I can then maybe go to thin lines, and we'll see there is a little gap. So I use trim and join those two lines together. So that just shows you that it has to be a closed shape. And there we are. So maybe if I decide the angle needs to change again, I can edit the revolve and just adjust that accordingly. It's probably okay. There we are. So again, tick to finish. 3D. And there's the modified leg. Okay, so then if I go back to plan, okay, I can't see it anymore because it's underneath this shelf. So I'll go to wireframe. Now I can see it more clearly. So using mirror draw axis, I'll snap to the midpoint of that shelf, and I should be able to flip it over the other side. If I want to flip it to the back, again I'll use mirror draw axis and use the midpoint of the side of the shelf, and then just come away at a right angle. And now again I can use mirror draw axis using the midpoint of the front of the shelf and flip it the other way. So then back to the 3D view, you see all those nice legs there. Okay, so again, these shelves sold for, it was about $1,000 each. And that was about 10, 15 years ago too. So, but they were all, it was because that was a nice veneer made from as well. So to build that up, it would just be more extrusions, but I won't show you how to do that. Sure you can manage that. So I'll finish that one. Well, yeah, that's right. So if I wanted to have the same shelf stacked up, you could just copy that. So maybe I'll just show you that quickly. So if I go to I'll go to that section that I had. So yeah, it's a good chance to maybe go over the work plane again, because if I try to copy it now, I can go left and right because that's still in the same plane, but it won't let me go up and down. And that's, again, because it's locked to the plane it was drawn on. So if you click on that diamond button, that dissociates it from the work plane. And then now, if I choose copy, it will let me go up. So from memory, they're about 350. Something like that. Maybe I'll just move that down so that I can see it. So down to 50. Oops. And, it's just getting in the way of the shelf. The lounge, sorry, is getting in the way of the shelf. So I'll go to my view properties, and I'm just going to hide the furniture so that we can see the shelves. And now I can use copy again. Just get a few more. There we are. And then back to the upper floor. Very quickly, I'll just put in the extrusions for the sides, just so you can see how easy it is to copy those. So there it would be, again, just a extrusion with maybe thin lines. I can offset 20. And then just draw lines to connect those. It doesn't need to be a curve, even though I know you might be tempted to do a curve to follow the shelf. In reality, it wouldn't be a curve, it would be made from a flat piece, so you can draw it like that. So, something like that. So, good trick there is to have it drawn in plan, and then worry about the heights in section afterwards. So at the moment it's just the height of this shelf, but I can easily now stretch that piece so that it lines up with the bottom of the next shelf, and then bring the bottom up so that it sits on the top of the bottom shelf. So if we look at that again in 3D, so that's one of the sides. And then again back to the plan, mirror, and let me change it to the other side. And then maybe with control, select both those pieces, go to a section, copy them, and you'll see it'll actually have the same issue as before. It's locked to the plane. So to fix that, I can go to the floor plan and have to select them individually, and click on that diamond again to disassociate from the plane. And then again, in that same view, use the control to select those two, back into section, and I'll just copy and tick multiple this time, so that I can bring that up to the upper shelves. And there we are. So basic bookcase, but again, the most important thing is understanding how the legs were done. The rest is just simple extrusions. And again, this was a real bookshelf that was sold in shops. And so then, very quickly save that. So I thought maybe a good example where you can see a blend might be a sloping wall, but there are lots of other examples where you'd be able to use blends to create good things. But again, maybe a sloping wall isn't a bad example. Oh, there's an even easier way for that. So I'll quickly show you. If you want to do a sloping floor, when you make any floor, I'll just make one very quickly. So I'll make a floor out here. Yeah, so the question, if you just watched the video, was how to do a sloping floor. So I'm just going to make a floor over in space, in empty space, so you can see it then. If I select it, you get the option to modify sub-elements. And so with that, you can pick on any of these green corner points and change the height of that point. So I'll make it, say, 200. And if we go into 3D view, you'll see that it's just brought that corner up. So if I want it to slope evenly, I could change the other corner point. So again, modify sub-elements. And I'll choose this one too, and make that 200 as well. And that's given it an even slope. So that works really well for floors. You know, you've got that really good option, modify sub-elements. Unfortunately, you don't have that for walls. So to make a sloping wall, generally the best way is using a blend. So again, using model in place, and then I'll set walls as the category, and I'll call it sloping wall. And then using a blend, much easier than what I just did with the Revolve. I'm going to make a rectangle, and I'll make that go at the back of my stairs. So basically I'm going to do a sloping wall that slopes over the top of my stairs. So I've drawn a rectangle. I'll just turn thin lines off so that you can see it. So now to do the top of my wall, I'll go to Edit Top. And I'm going to draw another rectangle, maybe over one of these steps. And then in Properties, I'm going to set the extrusion end to 20, well this is a low building, so let's go for 2000. So that'll be the height of my wall. So I'll finish it now. And now in my 3D view, there it is. So it's that easy. So sloping walls are actually quite easy because you can just draw the top and the bottom, or the bottom and then the top, and it will just slope between those two shapes. They don't need to both be the same size. So at the moment they're both rectangles that are exactly the same. But if I go back to the floor plan, and then if I go to Edit Face, you can make that rectangle a different size. So I could make this maybe come out this way, so it's bigger. And then I might go to Edit Top, and maybe I'll bring this back so that the top one's smaller. And we could even have this one coming out so it extends in that direction. And it will just blend between those two shapes. So again, finish, and you can see now we're getting a blend. Still sloping, but again with two different rectangles. And there could be any two shapes. You can go from a circle to a polygon. So it's a really versatile tool. The great thing about blends is that they're buildable. Unlike a lot of the freeform modelling that you get maybe with programs like SketchUp, where it's using surface-based modelling, this is solid modelling. So that tells you that a builder can build it because they work in a similar way. They need to have everything reduced down to 2D shapes, right? Two-dimensional profiles, in other words. And that's what I've been drawing here. I've drawn a rectangle on the bottom, rectangle on the top, so they can set those two shapes out on site, and then they can just essentially project between those two shapes and build this. And that's really a good starting point to understand construction, once you understand what can be built. And so again, if I come back to here, maybe I'll decide that I want that to sit behind the balustrade. So I can drag back to there, and again, change the bottom. I can switch now to Edit Face, and I'll just drag this back a little bit as well. Tick to finish, and again, see that in 3D. And then finally, now that I've done all that work, I can say, well, this balustrade, if I go to edit that path, doesn't need to have this segment, and then that might start to make more sense. There we are. Again, it's like an extrusion, so I can use the arrows to change the height just by stretching that to bring it up. And again, because it's been done with model in place, now I can go further and maybe put things like voids into it. So if I want to have some holes here, maybe shelving or anything like that. Again, I can make a void. Doesn't have to be a blend, I'll just make maybe a void extrusion to give you the idea. So I'll make a rectangle that goes through where I want maybe a shelf that's raised up, and maybe I'll have that starting at 1,000, the height of my balustrade, and then the end I'll bring up to, let's say, 1,500. See how that looks. Okay, so I haven't finished it yet, so I can see the rectangle still on the ground. But once it's finished, it'll then put in the height, 1,000 to 1,500. Cutting a hole. Okay, so hopefully that'll give you some ideas on how you can use those different modelling tools. So again, blend and revolve. So we've already looked at sweep. So the only one I haven't shown you is swept blend, and that is by far the least useful. I'd actually recommend that you don't even bother learning it. It's not a useful tool because it's quite limited. With swept blend, you can only use two shapes, just like a blend, and then also, basically a swept blend is a combination of a sweep and a blend, so it's limited to the two shapes, but those two shapes have to be parallel with the tangent. I don't want to get too technical, but basically they've got to be in line with the end of your path, and the path can only have one shape as well. So it's quite a limited tool. If you're interested in that sort of modelling, the sort of shape that it's giving you there, then you're much better off learning massing. So massing. So mass modelling is the more advanced modelling tool in Revit, but which will let you make anything. But it's much more involved than solid modelling. Now, we don't have time to go through it in this subject, but I'll just quickly show you to finish off on modelling. So massing, it's a completely different modelling system, and on the main menu here, this is how you can get to it using conceptual mass. Is one option. And again, it's a much more powerful modelling tool than solid modelling, but it gives you free-form shapes, and often those can't be made by builders. So it's great for conceptual design, especially if you're interested in doing the sorts of cutting-edge, organic and deconstructivist design that you see some people doing a lot. Certain architects really seem to like that. But you'll find those people have to then go and research a lot on construction to work out how to build those things. And so again, I don't see that there's much point doing that at this stage. You're much better off learning solid modelling, because again, those things can be built, and for interiors, that's fundamental. You need to be able to document and model all of your casework, all of your built-in furniture, and you can't use massing for those things anyway, because all these built-in elements need to be made in a joinery workshop from flat pieces of board. In other words, they need to be made from solids. And again, the massing, the more complex modelling system isn't going to help you there. You need to learn how to make all of those built-in elements using solid modelling, and again, just bring up the tool. Oops, that'll do. So again, you can do all of those things using these modelling tools, except for swept blend. So again, extrusion, blend, revolve, and sweep. Combining those with voids, using the same modelling options. Okay, so that should, again, hopefully finish off on modelling. And then the last thing I'll say about that is, again, just going back to the program, we've looked a little bit at plumbing fixtures, but make sure you know how to source those things, because you won't always be given the right fixtures that you want. So if you already have looked at suppliers like Karoma, Karoma, sorry. So Karoma have virtually all of their fixtures as Revit files now, which is great. So if you go to really anything, I think pretty much they have a Revit download. Have to open it up. Somewhere in here. Oh, they've moved it around, but it does have Revit download somewhere. Why can't I see it? I don't want to spend too long on this, but you definitely can get Revit. I'm just used to using the toolbar. Where's it gone now? Has anyone else been using this recently? Seen where they've moved the Revit downloads? Okay, so maybe we'll try a different way. Then if you just search for Karoma Revit. Oh, here we go. So specify Karoma. They've moved it over. There we are. Okay, so here on the right you've got Revit. And again, you can get pretty much all of their products as Revit downloads. But if you can't find these or the brands that you want, then you need to be able to model these things. And you can do it all with solid modelling using those tools. And then, so let's go back to the program. So plumbing fixtures generally aren't as complicated as they might seem, because really it just comes down to modelling. But then window and door families are a bit more involved. Now, if you're interested in learning how to model things like, especially windows, from scratch, I do have videos. So on my YouTube channel, just quickly show you. Oh, okay, once it comes up, there shouldn't be an error there. There we are. Okay, so we'll just have to go down, and it's right back, but show you it. Yeah, it won't be long. Okay, so here we are. So in this Mary Street project, you'll see there are step-by-step videos showing how to make window families. And, oh, unfortunately it's cutting it off at a year ago. So this one, though, does show some of it. So I might have to show you in the playlists instead. So if we go to playlists, then you can go to that project. So, it's a bit further down. So Revit Mary Street is the project. Here it is, Mary Street, sorry, that's what it's called. Let's bring that up in another tab. So there we are. So it has step-by-step videos showing how to make a window family, and you can see how involved that can be. Right, so notice there are 10 videos showing how to make a window family from scratch. So if you're interested, it's a really valuable skill. If you can do that, you'll get a job anywhere as a Revit operator, because they want the people, especially in any design firm where they're serious about Revit, they want people who can make their own families. It's actually probably the most important thing if you really want to learn Revit well. You need to know how to make a family, but it is a bit of a process. But if you're interested, you can work through those videos. And again, same with doors. And so then what you'll see, if you look at a window family like this, or a door family, you'll see the reason it is fairly complicated, because you can see here it's got a width and a height that are adjustable. So maybe I'll just change the width of this window so you can see the result. So I'll make it just, say, 1500 wide instead of 1000. Click OK. So notice how it's made the window wider, but the frame size is the same. So the person who set up this window family, they've locked the sides to the wall, and they've said, if the width changes, keep the frame size the same, but move those sides, the window jambs, to match the size of the new opening. So you have to establish that setup when you're making something like a window family. It's not just a matter of modelling. You've got to also think about how it needs to change when you change the size. Okay, so that's, again, the thing that's maybe not so obvious, because you're not just scaling it to make it bigger or smaller. You're setting up a whole series of relationships. Okay, so anyway, I just wanted to point that out. It's probably the hardest thing to learn in Revit, but again, in some ways it's one of the most important things if you really want to learn it well. So again, creating custom windows and doors, something you can definitely do. Not required for this project, but again, if you're interested, have a look at those videos I've done. And it does help just to have a basic understanding of those issues, because then when you get families that other people have made from places like Revit City or BIM Object or any of those sites, and you get messages or things coming up unexpectedly, might make it a bit more obvious why those things are happening. It's not because people are trying to make your life harder, it's because, again, often they've set it up so that it works in different situations. But if you don't understand how those parameters are set up, it can be quite difficult to modify. So if you get a family like that, sometimes it's easier just to go and find another one. Anyhow, so hopefully that's the last I'll need to do on modelling. And so from next week, I just want to focus on rendering. And so I'll be coming back to lighting, and then going from there, going right in more detail through most of the render settings, and again, continuing with lighting, and then following on from that, we'll go to materials more, and that should finish off everything you need to do for the final renders that you need to do for the final assignment. So I'll give you some time to try that, but again, that should be enough for modelling. And as long as you're using model in place regularly, I'll just say one last thing. If you do want to go further and develop your skills with families, just remember that by learning the tools with model in place, you're going a long way to learning how to model in a separate standalone family. So here I've just chosen that option if you missed it. File, New Family. And so a good family for things like shelving and other built-in furniture is metric casework. So notice how you have the same modelling tools. Extrusion, Blend, Revolve, Sweep. Exactly the same. So if you've learnt that with model in place, you can use all of those tools again with pretty much all of the common family types. They give you the same modelling tool. Okay, but I won't go too far into that. Maybe I will just give you a little example on that as we go through materials and lighting over the next few weeks. Alrighty, but again, try to model some things using some of the different tools apart from just extrusions, just to get some practice with those things. But unless you've got any questions about that, I'll finish up. It's all good? Yep, okay.